I never thought a divorce could feel quiet and loud at the same time. Quiet on the outside and screaming on the inside. One day, I was a wife. The next, I was sitting across from my husband in a sterile office, signing papers that would erase our life together. He was calm, polite, almost relieved. Every smile, every nod he gave seemed rehearsed. And I realized, in that moment, he had already moved on in his head long before I even knew it was over. He took the house. The house I had imagined filling with memories, with laughter and birthdays, with quiet mornings sipping coffee in the sunlight. He took the savings we had painstakingly built over the years, the little nest egg I thought would give me peace if anything went wrong. He took the car I loved, the one that had carried us on every road trip, every late-night adventure. He even took the photo albums, the ones I had thought we would split evenly. And as I tried to breathe through the panic, to make sense of the sudden emptiness around me, I heard the news that would twist the knife even deeper. He had remarried, fast, too fast, and that's when the feeling started, the one I couldn't shake. It was a cold, creeping sensation, starting at the base of my spine and crawling up to my chest. It was heavier than grief. He hadn't just taken things. Something felt wrong, deeply wrong. People always say time heals, but time also gives you space to notice what you didn't see before. I started replaying the last year of our marriage, every word, every look, every subtle change. How he suddenly started staying late at work, claiming projects that didn't exist. How he kept his phone face down, even when it buzzed with messages I didn't know were from her. How he stopped asking about my day, how he stopped sharing his. These weren't dramatic, confrontational moments. They were polite, almost invisible. And somehow, that made them scarier than any fight ever could. The divorce itself had been strange. He didn't argue. He didn't fight me on anything. The lawyer asked if I was sure about giving up certain possessions. I said yes, because I was exhausted. Because I wanted peace, because I didn't know what else to do. And I remember the look on his face as I signed away what little security I had left. Calm, polite, detached, almost as if he had rehearsed every gesture, every word, every sigh. He had already counted the cost, already prepared the victory speech for his new life. When I finally saw a picture of his new wife online, my chest tightened. Not because she was prettier. Not because I felt replaced. But because something about her felt familiar. Almost like a ghost brushing against my memory. I stared at that picture for far too long, searching my mind for clues I didn't want to find. Where had I seen that smile before? Why did my hands tremble even as I told myself to move on? I tried. I really did. I told myself to focus on me, on rebuilding, on the life I still had left. But curiosity is a quiet kind of pain. It doesn't scream, it whispers. And once it begins, it doesn't let go. I began wondering if our entire marriage had been a waiting room for something else. If I had been a placeholder, unaware, innocent, unknowing. And if so, what exactly had he taken from me besides material things? Everyone around me said the same thing. At least it's over. Time to move on. But was it? Or was this just the moment when the truth hides the deepest, waiting for you to notice, to unravel it slowly? Why did his happiness feel staged? Why did his new life feel like it had roots that somehow reached back into mine? And why did I feel that the divorce wasn't the end, but a terrifying beginning? I remember the night before I boxed up the last of my belongings. I was going through drawers, closets, and cabinets, trying to make sense of what remained mine. That's when I found it, an envelope, sitting among papers I hadn't opened in months. My name scrawled on the front in his handwriting. Empty. No letter, no note, just the envelope itself. Silently shouting that there were pieces of the story I didn't know. My heart raced. My fingers shook. My chest felt heavy. As though it were trying to push the truth out of my body before my mind could catch up. I was trembling. Not from the divorce itself, not entirely. But from the creeping awareness that this was bigger than money or possessions. Something had been happening under the surface. Something deliberate. Something I hadn't seen. And for the first time, I wasn't just sad. I was afraid. Afraid because whatever he had taken from me in that divorce, it wasn't just tangible. He had taken something more subtle. Something invisible but vital, and I was only beginning to sense the depth of it. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every glance, every laugh we had shared, looking for signs I'd missed. Had I been blind all along? Had I been too trusting, too naive? And then, like a shadow, the doubts crept in. Not the loud, obvious doubts, but the ones that whisper, that slowly twist your sense of reality. He seemed different in ways I couldn't put into words. Not cruel, not cold exactly, but distant in a way that went beyond moving on. Part of him had already left months, maybe years before the divorce papers were signed, and that thought made every memory of him suddenly suspect. Every shared moment, every laugh, every argument replayed in my mind like a scene in a film that had a hidden, darker meaning I was only beginning to understand. And then I remembered the little things. Subtle hints about her, the new wife, the woman I didn't know. People around me whispered things I couldn't ignore. Oh, they've known each other a long time. And when I asked him about it, he laughed, brushed it off, smooth, effortless, convincing. It should have calmed me. It didn't. It made my chest tighten and my stomach drop. Something about it felt wrong. Deeply wrong. I started doubting myself. Had I been blind? Had I misread signs I should have seen? Had I been naive to the point of oblivion? I went back over old photos, old messages, casual conversations that suddenly felt suspicious. Every word he had spoken, every slight defensiveness, every little avoidance of certain topics. It started forming a pattern I didn't want to see. Anyone in my place would have felt the same. Anyone would have asked themselves the same question. Was this real, or was I just distracted? And then the unsettling thought settled in. He had been meticulous, quietly, invisibly calculating, measuring every word, every gesture, every sign of my trust. He had mapped his exit without me even realizing it. And I thought I was choosing freely, negotiating fairly, believing I was safe. I wasn't. And when I finally saw a clear image of her, just a glimpse online, my heart jumped. Not with fear or jealousy, but with a strange, unnameable recognition. Something about her felt hauntingly familiar, like a memory I had misplaced, like a warning my mind couldn't fully decode. I told myself to stop, to move on, to focus on my own life. But curiosity has a quiet, insidious way of digging into your thoughts. It whispers questions you don't want to answer. Questions like, was our marriage just a waiting room for something else? Was I merely a placeholder? And if so, what exactly had he taken from me besides the house, the savings, the car, and the albums I thought were mine to keep? I boxed up the last of my belongings, trembling, thinking about the emptiness around me. And I realized something terrifying. The divorce had stripped me of possessions, but it hadn't been honest about the rest. Whatever he had taken in silence, in calculation, I was only beginning to feel its weight. And I wasn't ready for it. I couldn't sleep that night. Not really. My eyes were open, staring at the ceiling, heart hammering, thoughts spinning. At first, I told myself it was normal, divorce does that. It messes with your head. But soon, I realized it wasn't just grief or heartbreak. Something was different. Something was wrong. He didn't just leave. He had been gone long before the papers were signed, long before the courtroom. And I had only just noticed. I thought about the last year of our marriage. How he came home late, often with excuses that didn't make sense. How he seemed tense for no reason, fidgeting with his phone, muttering under his breath while pretending to be relaxed. How I once asked, "Is everything okay?" And he smiled a little too smoothly and said, "I'm fine." Don't worry. That smoothness, rehearsed, almost polite, had always been there. But now, it haunted me. And then there were the whispers about her, his new wife. I didn't know her, not really. At least, not officially. But the way people described her made my chest tighten. Oh. They've known each other a long time, someone said. A neighbor mentioned seeing them together at a cafe months before the divorce. A friend of a friend hinted they had mutual connections I didn't know about. Every word felt like a clue, a breadcrumb I wasn't supposed to follow. Yet I couldn't stop myself. I asked him directly once, casual conversation, trying to be calm. "So, how do you know her?" He laughed, smooth, effortless. "Oh, just friends. That's all." And yet, even in that simple answer, there was a weight, a subtle deflection that made my stomach twist. Something wasn't right. I could feel it. Deep in my chest. A cold, creeping certainty that I wasn't being told everything. That something had been carefully hidden from me. I started doubting myself. Did I miss something? Was I blind all these years? Had I been naive to the point of oblivion? I went back through old messages, old photos, even casual conversations I'd long forgotten. I dissected every word he had said, every slight defensiveness, every carefully avoided topic. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. And the more I looked, the more I realized I had been blind to the obvious. Anyone in my place would have felt the same. Anyone would have questioned their memory, their instincts, their judgment. Had I been imagining it all? Or had I ignored the signs because I didn't want to see them? Because seeing them would have meant accepting something I wasn't ready to confront. The more I thought about it, the more I noticed the meticulousness of his actions. Not dramatic, not confrontational. Quiet and visible, precise. Every word, every gesture, every choice, he had measured them carefully. He had mapped his exit down to the smallest detail. And I had believed I was making choices freely. I had believed I was safe. I wasn't. And then came the little hints about her, the way people described her, the way their history seemed deeper than anyone let on. They were careful about what they showed in public. They smiled and laughed, perfectly staged, almost casual. But underneath it, there was a tension I couldn't name. A distance that gnawed at me every time I thought about it. I started noticing coincidences. Little things that felt too precise to be accidental. A song he loved playing randomly on the radio. A scent that reminded me of her in a place I didn't expect. A laugh that echoed in my mind, even when I knew it wasn't real. My heart would race every time these things happened, my chest tightening as though warning me. And yet, I couldn't look away. I couldn't stop searching, piecing together fragments I wasn't ready to confront. Social media became a minefield. One afternoon, scrolling casually, I froze. A photo appeared, clear, unblinking, undeniable. Her, at a party months ago, a place I hadn't attended. Smiling, laughing, looking at the camera, or was it at me? My stomach dropped. That smile felt like a warning I didn't understand. My fingers trembled, but I couldn't scroll away. I couldn't escape it. And then the memories started flooding back. Nights I had brushed off, explanations I had accepted. The borrowed book he returned late with a note I hadn't understood. Casual mentions of someone he used to know. Even the faint perfume that lingered on his coat sometimes, something I thought I imagined. Suddenly, these flashes of the past felt loaded with meaning I hadn't been ready to see before. I tried to convince myself it wasn't real, that I was overthinking, but my body betrayed me. My chest ached, my hands shook, and my mind raced, connecting dots I hadn't seen before. Something about this entire situation didn't feel like chance. It felt deliberate, calculated, controlled, and the thought made me shiver. I thought about the envelope, the one I found before boxing the last of my things. Empty, my name written on it. I hadn't understood its meaning at the time. Now, it seemed like a warning. Something I had ignored, something I had misread, and something that had been part of a much larger plan I was only beginning to see. I went over every detail of our divorce again. His calmness, his detachment, the way he didn't argue over the house, the savings, the car, the photo albums. Every detail now seemed suspicious. Every smile, every polite word, every subtle glance in the courtroom suddenly felt like a calculated performance. A plan executed flawlessly, while I thought I was choosing freely, while I thought I was safe. And then the disturbing realization began to settle in. It wasn't just that he had moved on, or that he had remarried, or even that he had taken more than I had expected. No, it was that he had taken more than I even knew was possible. Not just money, not just possessions, not just memories. Something deeper, something essential. And it wasn't just fear or heartbreak anymore, it was something darker. Something insidious. Something that whispered across the walls of my empty house, across the silence of my nights, and made me feel like I had been walking blind for years. The thought was unbearable, and yet, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every memory, every word, every little detail of the past year seemed to shift. Nothing felt solid anymore. Nothing felt safe. And I knew, deep down, that the answer, the truth, was closer than I wanted to admit. It was waiting. And I wasn't ready to face it. I don't know why I agreed to that gallery opening that evening. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was some reckless need to see life moving on without me. To measure the gap between the world I had lost and the one I had been forced into. I told myself it was just a social outing, that I would leave early, smile politely, and avoid thinking about him. But the moment I stepped inside, I felt it, the shift in the air. Subtle, almost imperceptible at first. But it hit me in the pit of my stomach. Tension that I couldn't name. Something told me tonight, this night, was not going to be ordinary. The gallery was crowded. Conversations hummed around me, glasses clinked, cameras flashed, and laughter punctuated the hum of chatter. People moved from painting to painting, sipping wine, nodding at each other politely. And yet, I felt like I was moving through a different world. My chest tightened. My heart pounded. I scanned the crowd, my eyes darting, searching, even though I didn't know what exactly I was looking for. And then I saw him. Calm, smiling, hands in pockets, the picture of someone who had everything under control. But my eyes didn't linger on him for long. Beside him, she was there. She was laughing, her posture relaxed, her head tilted slightly, like she belonged there naturally. And in that instant, I felt a cold wave sweep over me. Something about her, something about the way she moved, the curve of her shoulder, the tilt of her head. It wasn't just familiar. It was recognition. The kind that makes your stomach drop and your chest tighten, the kind that whispers you know her. I froze. My body betrayed me. My feet, stubborn as if on their own, moved closer even though my mind screamed stop, turn around, don't look. But curiosity, that quiet, insistent pain, pushed me forward. I forced myself to stay, pretending I belonged, pretending I was just another guest at the gallery. My hands trembled, and my chest felt tight, but I couldn't look away. Flashes of memory hit me suddenly, like a film reel playing too fast. Months, maybe years, of small, almost invisible signs suddenly clicked into place. The borrowed book he returned late one night, with a note I hadn't understood. The casual mentions of someone, from the past, that I had laughed off. The faint perfume lingering on his coat after he came home late. The subtle way he had started leaving certain conversations when her name came up. Things I had thought meaningless, inconsequential. Now they felt deliberate, carefully orchestrated. And I realized with a sickening twist in my stomach that he had been hiding something from me the entire time. I forced myself to take a deep breath. I tried to calm the chaos in my mind, tried to convince myself that maybe I was imagining it. But my body didn't believe it. My stomach churned, my palms were damp with sweat, my heart thudded in my ears. I remembered the empty envelope I had found before boxing the last of my things. My name on the front, empty. Now, in the glare of the gallery lights, I felt its weight. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It had been a warning, a key, something I had ignored at the time. And now I understood that I hadn't ignored it out of carelessness. I hadn't been ready to see the truth. Every detail of the past year came rushing back, sharp and accusing. Nights he came home late, claiming work emergencies, but avoiding explanations. Times he whispered on the phone, voices muffled. Words I didn't hear clearly. Little acts, little gestures, every one of them laying the groundwork for something I hadn't noticed. My mind spun, connecting dots. Assembling a puzzle I didn't want to solve. And the more I connected, the colder I felt. I kept telling myself to leave, to walk away, to pretend I hadn't seen him, heard the truth I could almost taste but not fully grasp. But my body refused. My eyes stayed locked on them. And as I watched, her laughter rang in my ears, a sound that felt familiar, a sound that my brain desperately tried to place. I thought, why do I feel like I know her? But the answer refused to surface, hiding in the shadows of my memory. I remembered another moment months ago, something buried deep. A face in a crowd at a party, laughing at a joke I barely remembered. Or maybe it had been a coffee shop, or a bookstore. My mind wasn't certain. But there was something about that face, a memory half forgotten, that now seemed to click into place. The recognition hit me like a punch to the stomach. A familiar curve of her lips, the way her eyes sparkled, something I should have noticed long ago, and now I couldn't unsee it. The gallery dimmed slightly as evening deepened, lights shifting to highlight certain paintings. She turned her head, not fully, just enough for me to catch the outline, the curve of her features. My breath caught, my heart hammered in my chest. Fear, disbelief, and something deeper collided inside me. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring down at a truth that could shatter everything I had believed. Everything clicked at once: the divorce, the sudden remarriage, the empty envelope, the borrowed book, the little hints I had brushed off. The pieces fell together with a precision that made my stomach twist. I realized he hadn't just moved on. He hadn't just remarried. He had orchestrated it, quietly, meticulously, invisibly. And I had been blind. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. I wanted to confront him. But the fear rooted me in place. Not just fear of him, but fear of the truth. The truth that had been waiting for me all along, tucked into corners of my memory, hidden in everyday moments I had dismissed. My eyes flicked from him to her, searching for a clue, a hint of recognition. Anything that would explain the gnawing familiarity. And that's when I realized something even more unsettling. She wasn't just anyone. There was a connection. Something in her expression, the way she held herself, that told me she had been part of this story long before I knew it. Long before the divorce. Long before the envelope. My hands shook. My mouth went dry. My chest felt tight, like I was trying to breathe underwater. I couldn't look away, and yet I couldn't move closer. My mind raced, reconstructing every memory, every conversation, every little oddity I had dismissed. The familiarity, the hints, the subtle signs, they were all pointing to something I wasn't ready to see. I remembered the empty envelope again, and a cold realization hit me. It had been more than a message. It had been a warning. Something I had been too naive, too trusting, too unprepared to understand. And now, standing in that gallery, the weight of it pressed down on me like a physical force. My chest tightened again. My knees felt weak. I was trembling, and I didn't care who saw me. My mind screamed, "This is bigger than anything you imagined." And I knew it was true. Every carefully hidden gesture, every calculated move, every invisible thread of deceit was unraveling right in front of me. I wanted to look away. I wanted to pretend I hadn't seen her, hadn't noticed the way my body recognized something my mind was just beginning to understand. But something deep inside me, a stubborn need for closure, forced my gaze forward. And then I saw her face more clearly. Not just a glimpse. Not a blurry photo online. Her eyes, her expression, the curve of her lips. It was impossible to ignore. My mind screamed, "No, this can't be." I wanted to step back, to flee, to shut my eyes, but my body froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't do anything but watch. Every memory of him, every shared moment, every word, every laugh, suddenly felt like part of a puzzle I wasn't ready to solve. And now, the last piece, the face, the identity, the connection, was right in front of me. My breath caught. My heart pounded. Fear, disbelief, and raw, aching anticipation filled me. I was on the edge of discovering a truth I had been avoiding my entire life. And then I realized, with a mixture of terror and inevitability, the revelation I had been dreading was right here. But I didn't see everything. Not yet. Not yet. Time seemed to stop the moment her face came into full view. My chest tightened, my knees felt weak, and a cold wave swept over me that I couldn't shake. It wasn't just the shock of seeing her there, it was the recognition. The realization that the woman standing beside him, the woman who had been so quietly part of his life, was someone I had known all along. Someone I had trusted. Someone I never thought would betray me. My mind reeled, replaying every memory, every conversation, every moment I had shared with her. Childhood laughter, secrets whispered in confidence. Late night phone calls filled with dreams and fears. How could she be the person standing here, smiling at him like she had always belonged? Like the years of friendship and trust had meant nothing. It was impossible, yet undeniable. I tried to breathe, tried to steady myself, but my body shook. My heart pounded in my chest, threatening to escape. I remembered the envelope, empty, with my name on it, and suddenly it made sense. It hadn't been meaningless. It had been a silent signal, a key, a warning that the threads of my life were being quietly pulled apart. And I had ignored it. Too trusting, too blind, too sure that the people I loved would never betray me. My mind flashed back to the divorce, to his calm detachment, to the way he had watched me sign away what little security I had left. Everything suddenly clicked. The borrowed book with the hidden note, the casual mentions of someone from the past, the faint perfume on his coat, the rehearsed smiles, the hidden glances. Every small, seemingly innocent detail had been part of a larger plan, and now I understood it fully. This wasn't just betrayal. This was deliberate, meticulous, calculated. The divorce had been a surface wound, something I could see and try to move past. But this was the knife behind the mask. The personal, intimate deception I had never imagined. And my heart broke in ways I didn't think possible. I remembered the nights I had defended him to my friends. Every quiet hope that maybe we could rebuild something. Every time I had believed in his innocence. And now I understood that rebuilding had never been an option. Not with her. Not with him. Not with the web of lies that had been spun right under my nose. Tears welled up, not just for the loss of a marriage, but for the loss of trust, friendship, and innocence. For years, I had believed that the people closest to me were allies, that love and loyalty were guaranteed. But now I saw that some people are capable of hiding their true selves so perfectly that even your strongest instincts fail you. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to confront them both and demand answers, demand the truth. But the fear was paralyzing. It wasn't just fear of him. It was fear of the truth, fear of what I had ignored, fear of realizing how blind I had been. And yet, underneath that fear, there was a spark of clarity. Because seeing her there, fully, undeniably, I also saw the truth of my own strength. I saw that betrayal, no matter how deep, does not define me. That even when people take everything from you, possessions, trust, memories, friendships, they cannot take the part of yourself that refuses to be broken. I took a shaky breath and let the realization sink in. He hadn't just taken my house, my savings, my car, my albums. He hadn't just moved on quickly, remarrying someone I thought I trusted. He had taken my sense of security, my certainty, my belief in the people I loved most. He had stolen the illusions I had built over years, carefully dismantled them piece by piece, and replaced them with a reality I wasn't ready to face. And yet in that clarity, I also felt something unexpected. Power, understanding, the ability to see the truth for what it was, unflinching, undeniable, and utterly freeing. For the first time since the divorce, I realized that I had the choice to define my own life. That their betrayal, no matter how deep, could not control me. I walked through the gallery, each step deliberate, each breath steadying me. My hands were still shaking, my chest still tight, but I felt the weight lifting ever so slightly. I could see him for what he truly was, a man who had carefully hidden his actions, who had chosen someone else while I remained blind. I could see her for what she truly was, a friend turned betrayer, someone who had been hiding in plain sight. Someone whose smile now felt like a dagger to my heart. And as I stepped away, leaving the gallery behind, I allowed myself to grieve, not just for the marriage, but for the years of trust and love that had been manipulated and stolen. I grieved the innocence I had taken for granted, the belief that people would always act with integrity. But I also felt something stronger than grief: clarity. Clarity that whispered I was still here. Clarity that reminded me that no one else can define my worth. Clarity that taught me the harsh, painful lessons of betrayal, but also the enduring power of self, respect, and resilience. I remembered every little sign I had ignored, every subtle warning, every gut feeling I had brushed aside, and instead of letting them haunt me, I allowed them to teach me. To remind me that trust must be earned, that boundaries must be protected, that vigilance and self-respect are not signs of cynicism, but survival. Betrayal leaves a mark. There is no doubt about that. It is sharp, it is deep, and it is personal. But clarity is different. It sets you free. It allows you to rebuild, to heal, to stand again, even when the wounds feel too raw to touch. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the possibility of moving forward, not running, not hiding, but standing tall in the truth I had finally seen. I thought about my life, about the years lost, the moments stolen, the illusions shattered, and I felt a quiet, stubborn strength rising inside me. Pain would always be part of this story, but so would wisdom. Heartbreak would always be part of the narrative, but so would clarity. And in that combination, I found power. I left the gallery that night with my head held high, even though my heart felt shattered. I realized that some betrayals are about control, some are about secrecy, and some are about timing, but all of them leave lessons that demand acknowledgement. I had lost much, yes. But I had also gained something invaluable, the ability to see clearly, the ability to recognize deceit before it could take root again, and the understanding that my life, my choices, my worth, were never defined by someone else's duplicity. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal, I want you to pause and reflect with me. Think about the people you trust, the boundaries you set, and the courage it takes to walk away even when the truth cuts deeper than you ever imagined. Comment below with your thoughts, with your own stories, or even just a word of support. Share this story with someone who understands the pain of betrayal, because sometimes, the only way to heal is to know you're not alone. Betrayal leaves a mark, but clarity can set you free.